stochastic fiction game. This is a timed writing game where I'm going to give myself 1 hour, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds to write a story dependent upon what I create right now, which is a stochastic fiction outline. That stochastic fiction outline is going to have a set of story elements, and then for the next hour and 43 minutes, I'll be writing a story using those story elements. And required to use those story elements, I'm going to write the story at the end and read it aloud, no matter the state. And so for today's stochastic fiction game, we have these stochastic fiction game story elements, the constraints I must write for. Our story elements for today is setting time future, setting main location space, conflict person versus nature, quantity of primary characters mini, point of view third, tense past tense, genre romance, format flash fiction. Those are the stochastic fiction game story elements for today. Well, with under a minute, hour, and 43 minutes, let's go ahead and write this thing. As soon as I saw future space, that was good. It's a good combination. It doesn't say sci-fi, so we're going to keep within the realm of contemporary, but maybe have to go sci-fi because this setting time is the future. I have a positive outlook in life right now, at least for this next hour and 42 minutes. I'm going to pretend and not pretend. I'm trying to be more optimistic. So it's going to be a happy, good future, and it's going to be in space. And it'll be our contemporary future, not some, aliens coming in during the future and helping us realize that we need to come together for some other antagonist besides just wanting to help each other. So the conflict is person versus nature. Should I use the primordial nature for humans to hate each other? No, it's not. I think it's pretty well taught. Maybe there's a little bit of nurture in nature that involves us to be aggressive to each other to see who wins. I don't know. Person versus nature. Quantity of primary characters, many. Okay. Person versus nature in space. I mean, that you're fighting against very nature by extracting yourself from it and trying to sustain life. Point of view third, tense past tense, genre, romance, format, flash fiction. One moment here. Well, now I feel better. A little bit of a deep breath. Now, quantity of primary characters, many. Point of view third. I got to remember that in past tense. I have a tendency to write simple present tense. So maybe it'll be simple past tense. Genre romance. I don't know about that. It's going to be fun. So space romance. A space romance in the future. Person versus nature. That could be interesting. So format flash fiction. And there's an hour and 40 minutes left. And I barely read through the story elements. But flash fiction is a story that should have a complete arc. Complete resolution. Complete characters. Somewhere around 600 to 1,200 words, depending on the genre and depending on the publication. I'll be lucky if I get around 700. But they'll be good words. Flash fiction also, you want to make sure you have like a pop and title, so you're almost setting up the scene as the reader reads into it and save you some words in the body of the story. Make a bold statement. Romance. If it's romance for genre, and this is going to be in space, so that means the romance, it has to lean heavily upon the genre of romance, which is typically some protagonist whom they care for very affectionately and sexually, as well as, the deep personal connection. and there's a struggle. I don't think it's as like domineering as romantasy, and it's not in a fantasy setting necessarily. That's romantasy. At least from my small experience of reading about romantasy genres. I've never read a romantasy book, not yet. I will. But this is not romantasy. This is sci-fi future romance. Let's roll for the genders. I'm thinking like, so if I were just to pick like some parabonding genders that could result in offspring or some kid, you'd have your natural like versus nature story right there, because if you're in space, let's say we're traveling in space, you're probably going to want to limit the amount of humans that you have, and you'll need to control that, especially if it's like a space mission that lasts years. Pregnancy along the way would not be, well, unless you planned it, but it still wouldn't be that likely to be helpful. So you'd have restrictions against it, is what I'm thinking. But you'd also be in hibernation, right? So it's like when you get out of hibernation, you do your work. I mean, that's like, what's the conflict is just not controlling one's, man, and I'm streaming this. But let's use that constraint. I don't need to get all, well, let me think about my own self. I mean, if I were to be honest, like, urges can be taken by focusing on something else, or so maybe not go down that road. I mean, I like the idea of that story, and I honestly think that story is like, has legs. If it were a running set of words that was going somewhere, I don't know what has legs. Fudge. What time is it? Nature, the very surviving in space. What is that one? Was it Silent Running? I think the one where there's a space museum of trees that are alive, of real trees. It's in space for reasons that I can't remember. And then there was like a budget cut, and the person wanted to save the trees, and so they left. Was that Silent Running? Probably not. I thought it was. Anyway, I know I probably mentioned it before, because this subject comes up a lot, at least with the nature part in my mind, because it's a very impactful movie, so I think of it when there's any sort of space theme trope about being able to survive. And this was able to survive because it was like a museum of plants. I really hope I have the name right. Probably wrong, but that's okay. Humans are wrong, and that's good. We can normalize our truth together. So for this, I'm gonna go with and I can write around it. Like, I don't need to get nasty, right? Like, there's no need to get graphic unless you're selling that and pushing it, but I don't need to push that. It's not what I'm pushing today. Not that that's bad to push, the graphic literature. At least you're writing and not having some machine do it for you, which means a lot. It makes you human. It makes you more powerful than any machine ever will be. That's not human. Yeah, and other animals I'm sure are creative too, and they probably have more special ability than any sort of large language model or computing device is going to have. Let's call it so it's gonna like protocol, proto. We'll call it No. It's going to have to be some record, right? Not right. I mean, I'm assuming I'm like answering my own question to my own personas that I construct in my mind of people that I know that has a certain ability that I want to mimic because it's perfection or it's better than I can do it. Or they've criticized me that was really hit home. And so now I'm having that persona of trying to write a flash fiction story, and I suppose it's my own because I don't know many people that write as much flash fiction as I do. It's a lot easier to stream video game flash fiction and stochastic fiction game if it's a flash fiction story because you can actually complete it within the time. And this story needs a thing, and I'm just trying to like... I don't want to make it a log, although it's very tempting. Excuse me for the clearing of the throat, but it happens, and I forget at times I'm being recorded when doing this. At least I didn't pick my nose. That would be a little bit more awkward. But I'd probably forget about it. Hindsight being the past. Okay, let's call this protocol. Is it like protocol? What's like rule? Let's see, contract rule. Contract rule. Contract term. Contract term 54, 40, no, it's important. 3 of we could do like epistolary, right? Epistolary is formal letters, emails, correspondence. It wouldn't be the same, I guess. I don't want to look up the meaning of epistolary, and I'm hoping I'm getting it defined right because sometimes I conflate a lot of stuff, and pedantic natures kind of get lost into it, and it's just a true nature. It's not like, anyway, let's stop talking before I sound more stupid. Too late. Contract term 3 of agreement of flight crew of flight. They're going to go between solar systems. We are in a solar system. There are many solar systems in a galaxy. There are many galaxies in our universe, and there's only one universe in this dimension. So we're going to have going between universes, not galaxies. If I have my scientific term, solar system, I mean there's sun, solar. It took me a long time to realize that. Like, again, conflating things, not slowing the mind down to actually think and separate. Flight crew agreement. Term 3 of flight crew agreement during of intergalaxy flight crew agreement of the intergalaxy galaxy. And I could do this. I can find a way to make it more of a narrative instead of epistolary. Let's read a document, because you know how exciting reading a document is? Yeah, that's exciting. That's how exciting. Right there. So term 3 of intergalaxy flight crew agreement of intergalaxy. Intergalactic planetary. That's a Beastie Boys song. Be intersolar planetary. Intergalactic. Hey, intergalactic. Let's go with that. Intergalactic. Galactic. I don't know how to spell galactic. I'm just gonna make a guess. Galactic. Intergalactic flight crew agreement. It's good enough for me to be able to read that aloud and pretend like I knew what I thought I was talking about. Term 3 of the Intergalactic Flight Crew Agreement. Thou shalt not. Maybe like you must refrain. What's the term 3 of the Intergalactic Flight Crew Agreement? Intergalactic. What kind of exploration? Intergalactic exploration. Intergalactic. Intergalactic exploration flight crew agreement. Thou shall not procreate. Thou shall not, thou shall not. How the hell do I spell thou? Thou. I can't even think of that word right now. Thou. You shall not. Let's just be poignant. Let's not make it like it's part of a test of commandment. You shall not procreate. I mean, I would assume if you're doing intergalactic, though. Man, that's a weird question. I mean, you'd almost want to like avoid too much emotional pair bonding. Okay, so this is gonna be let's roll the dice. I got an hour and 26 minutes. I got the focus. This is in space. Let's read the story elements, because one of the last times I've done this, I've thought I had a decent story. It was maybe a 2 of 4. It ended up being a 0 because story elements, the conflict was person versus supernatural, and I was like person versus society or something like that. Future for the time, setting time future. Yes, we are showing and telling we're in the future merely by what they're doing, their activity. Intergalactic travel. From Earth. Maybe I should put from Earth, so there's like some sort of, way to further anchor this in some reality, maybe some possible future if we get our shit together and don't kill each other. Still waiting to find out if that happens. Hope it doesn't. Some people, I believe, though, in this life, hope it does, or at least hope it makes them the ruler of the world. We have space because we're doing space travel. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw on Earth, just so intergalactic Earth. Earth flight crew. I want to put Earth. Intergalactic exploration flight crew agreement for Earth to Andromeda. I don't know. Andromeda. I don't know of SETI. I don't know why SETI Alpha 6. I know that's probably a Star Trek, potentially from Wrath of Khan, space. I think that's right. SETI Alpha 6, SETI Alpha 5, was it, where Khan was on the planet? I'd like to think that's true, but I'm not certain. It's true in my mind right now, and that's where I came up with that name. I want something similar, like Alpha Quadrant. Now, geez, that's never been used. The Beta Quadrant. No one wants to be in the Beta Quadrant. From Earth to Obsidian. I don't know how to spell obsidian. Obsidian Galaxy. Intergalactic exploration flight crew for flight from Earth for flight. It's like Flight 19 from Earth to the Obsidian Galaxy. You shall not procreate. It's happened before. So what do we got? We got past tense. It happened before. It happened before. This is why. This is the reason why. And I could kind of do that in a flash fiction story. Probably an hour, 22 minutes. I don't want to be a very good flash fiction story. I'll likely rate it, pat myself on the back for even if I fell and move on with life. Feeling unsuccessful, but at least an attempt was made. And so let's continue on with this. Let's look at the setting time, future, setting main location, space. Yes, person versus nature. And this is the nature, like fundamentals of nature, pair bonding and mating and stuff like that. So that's the nature. So I think that is good. Quantity of primary characters, many. Okay, we can do that. But I'm not going to get kinky with it at all, but it's definitely going to be, why would you need to wake? When you're there, you've reached the Andromeda. Oh, boom, 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 boom. They're going to reach the galaxy because you don't necessarily need to wake them up. Unless, like, I'm sure you could throw in and I've done this for a different reason. You wake them up because there's a pretend or there's a feeling of a need of the ultimate machine, which is the human being. To fix a thing. That's usually how you can wake someone from a slumber, or they arrive at their destination. And because this is going to be, they arrive at their destination, so all the people have to wake up, and we'll say there's like 6 of them. I'll try to write this without, I guess, with the observance of, I don't know if I shouted out this would, it doesn't need to be pornorific either. It could just be sensual and slightly physical. I'm not going to get like Henry Miller's level of lewdness, which is poetic and beautiful. But at the same time, yeah. The people who ban things are much more open to violence than they are than sex. It's crazy. Really crazy. If you called yourself a prostitute, you'd be contemned, but if you called yourself a mercenary, you would be respected. It's a weird world we live in. Term 3 of the Intergalactic Exploration Flight Crew Agreement for Flight 19 from Earth to the Obsidian Galaxy. You shall not procreate. No one died along the way to Okay. Well, there's just like no one. I'm trying to use a narrative voice I wouldn't normally use because I might as well try to at least. I'm trying to change how I write everything all the time, I suppose. And my present simple, even my past simple writing with lots of action verbs is, in a sense, jaded. So for this one, I'm going to make it like it's a person talking. No one trains to sleep for years and have erotic thoughts. Now, wouldn't you? I mean, so that goes back to like the rationale and not rationale. What am I thinking? The potential moral, immoral question would you want to make yourself infertile? So there'd be no chance. Because you're on a way to a place where you're not certain you're going to be able to find more resources. So the planning for such a thing, I suppose you can only get so big, right? I mean, and then space debris, I know there's not a lot of it, but still, if it's a pebble and you're going really fast, it's going to kind of cause issues. So you don't want a super huge spaceship unless you've got futuristic fancy space armor that can just brush aside space trash moving real fast. So there ain't going to be that many people. Be like 6. Keep it small. And because it's 6, because it's small and you want to have to plan exactly, you can't exactly expand that with having children. So then you're going to have to compensate for the oxygen, water, food, space. Ultimately, yes. Now, would you want to sterilize it? No one trains you to sleep for years and wake up in log deep, realizing the suppressant don't work for you. All right, so let's roll a gender. Man, let's roll for pronouns and identity. They roll a they, this could be fun. So let's go 1 female, 2 male, 3 they, 4 roll again. 3 they. Okay. And it is. One thing I don't have time to do is pretend to roll a dice. This will be more challenging, for sure. Can I say again? Probably. No one trains to sleep for years and have erotic thoughts, have erotic dreams. Feeling sensual. No one trained. No one past tense. And I want to put a person's face in this so I can identify a character that's going to lead through the story. We need that character that's at least going to lead through this. It's just a flash fiction story, so we just want that one. No head hopping, because that's just not enough words to be able to do that. An hour and 14 minutes. my attention's waning a little bit. I'm getting a little bit distracted by other things I'm writing right now. I have a tendency to do this once I get anxiety. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with this story? Fortunately, this is where I'd probably get sidetracked and start editing something I'm more comfortable with, because it's just at that state to where I'm starting to feel really good about the outcome and feel more positive and feel more success with each, iteration of rewrites and editing. That's in my mind right now. Now it's not. So no one trained you to sleep. No one trained. It's a they. Stamps, stamps, glance. No one trained glance to sleep for. Let's put a date. Let's make it sound official. 4 years and 16 days. That way, it seems so official. No one trained glance to sleep for 4 years and 16 days. And suppress erotic dreams and wake feeling sensual and trained. No one trained glance to sleep for 4 years and 16 days while suppressing erotic dreams. So they woke feeling sensual, feeling the need for sensual touch. Now, this was a longer piece, which is not, it's flash fiction, and after today I probably won't think of this story again. Such a story as you write. But for this particular story right here, I'm trying to think of feel for need for sensual touch, realizing the suppressants and chemical and drug-induced sexual repressants. What's the no one trained glance, like a lance with the G, glance. No one trained glance to sleep for 4 years and 16 days while suppressing erotic dreams. So they wouldn't wake, so they present, is that present perfect? I don't know, wouldn't wake. I should just wouldn't wake feeling the need for sensual touch, realizing the suppressants and drug-induced drug-induced numbness, suppressants, realizing the sensual suppressants and psychological psychotraining failed to suppress the pulsating for a hug while sitting with head hung in the recovery bay. in the recovery bay, in the wake bay, in the waking room, with 3 other members of the flight crew. Lance tried. Maybe it's just a hug. Maybe they realized how's this going to end? I don't even know. It's got to end, of course. It will end. Yes. How? I don't know. I think it's just going to be a hug that they're after. Just simplify it. Maybe it has suppressed some of it, right? But not all of it. I've never had that type of suppressive nature, appeal, otherwise, anything. So I wouldn't know exactly how it makes one feel, so it's total fiction. And it's in the future, so, I'm sure there's nanos involved in the suppression. The nanosuppressors, the suppressant nanos. Nanos everywhere. Just throw in a handful of nanos and quantum physics and dimensions, and you have yourself a sci-fi novel. So walking the waking room with 3 other members of the flight. Lance tried to listen to the instructions on how to recover memory and enable and work their jobs of repair, of guidance, how to recover memory and work their jobs of repair, data mixing, data normalization, and redundancy. If one human died, Glance only thought about let's just throw the gender. 1, 2 female, 2 male, 4 they for pronoun, and then 4 roll again. 2, so it's a male. So they hug Glance and Phil. I've done that name before. Carlson, Jedediah. I've done Jedediah. I've done Jed. Jake. Man, I know I've done a Jake, but I can't remember the last time I used the name Jake for a story, so let's use that right now. Glance only thought about hugging, but now I'm like, Glance sucks. Like, I keep on thinking like I'm going to go look at something. I'm going to glance real quick. I'll glance at it. I glanced at it. Maybe Glance just doesn't have that thought. It'd be really quick then. Hugging Jake. Jake laid on back on the pod bed, on the hyperpod. I think I've used hyperpod before. Hyperpod bed. It could have been in the last book published through Word Prostitute called Video Game Flash Fiction Homebrew Revolution. On sale now throughout the Western Wide Web. And if you go to Video Game Flash Fiction YouTube site, there's videos of me playing that game and writing those stories. But let's get back to this, because there's also a stochastic fiction game YouTube channel that has these and older ones of these stochastic fiction games available. If you're listening to it right now, please subscribe. if you're listening to this right now, well, we're on Twitch, so you can also subscribe to that too. Now let's get on with this story here. So Jake laid on the hyperpod bed, doing dead bugs to find, to sync his mind and body Jake's muscled body shrank, shrunk, I'm past tense, yo. Shrunk. I hope that's shrunk. If that's not shrunk, well then. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed doing dead bugs to sync his mind and body before sitting up. Jake's muscled body shrunk during the hyper journey. And Jake rarely talked unless it was to discuss baseball or space and repairs to the ship. Guess who? Guess who wants to hug Jake? Glance wants to hug Jake. He's got to fight that hug. You don't want distractions. You don't want emotional distractions. So let's go back. You shall not procreate. Nor pair bond. That's better. Let's just tighten that constraint a little bit more. Then we have a little bit more tension because they're at least, while they may not be having any sort of procreation, they still may be having the sex, at least not in this scene. They just want a hug. Warming their mind up to sensuality. A hug is a very good thing. Most of the time it just means a hug. At least a judgment of how farther you want to go and share a moment. When to separate. Let's think this. So Jake laid on the hyperpod bed, doing dead bugs to sync his body and mind. Jake's muscle body shrank during the hyper. I don't know how to transition from this sentence to the next sentence to the next paragraph and finish the story. I got an hour left. I mean, I think I can get this done. Will it be good? It'll be something more than what was existed before. And yeah, created by a human. Don't ever forget to do that. Okay. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed doing dead bug. Hyperpod bed. A row of 6 open hyperbeds. Hyperbeds. Hyperpods. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed of a row of hyperpods, doing dead bugs to sync his mind and body before sitting up. Jake's muscle body shrank during the hyper. The hyper. It's the hyper. It's slang. I think I've used this for in a video game flash fiction story for Bentley Bears. It's a game about a bear, and I think I used the term waking up from the hyper. In that story, a bear was a gangster. A little bit anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphic? I believe that's the word I want. It could be yet another word that really doesn't mean what I say or have intended for to mean when I say it. That'll happen today again. If it happened just now. Jake laid on the hyperbed of a row of 6 hyperpod bed of 6 row hyperpods, doing dead bugs. A little bit of alliteration there to skip back into the doing dead bugs to sink his mind. We got Jake's muscled body shrunk during the hibernate. Rarely during the hyper. Jake's muscle body shrank during the hyper. Blah, blah, blah. And his mind recessed even of dreaming of problem solving. Can I write the word dreaming? Problem solving. Oh, shoot. Let's stretch. Well, I think I'm someplace decent. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed, blah, 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 receptive problem solving. Jake looked at the illuminated white ceiling, thinking of processes to ensure the coordinates are accurate and report near the, what did I call this galaxy? I called it the Obsidian Galaxy. The Obsidian Galaxy. A galaxy. I don't know if there's an E there. I'm just going to go with that galaxy and call it good. Not about a hug. Thought. Jake looked at the illuminated. I suppose my tense sets it in the past and then continue on. Okay, well, this feels a little sloppy, but whatever. I think I got some sort of story. It doesn't have the pop and the prose that I usually like with a fine story, but, we got 55 minutes left and we'll see what happens. Maybe not much more than this. And if that's the case, oh well. Life goes on. Jake laid, we have the coordinates are accurate and report near the Obsidian Galaxy to begin the process of waking all the crew. The entire let's not get too ridiculous, 14 crew members. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed of a row of 6 hyperpods, doing dead bugs to sink his mind and body before sitting up. Coordinates and doing reports near the Obsidian Galaxy to begin waking the entire crew. not thinking about a hug. 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 Hug, thought, glance. Well, chest and loins. Loins, like my loins. Loins. I'm going to look that up. The search and return engine. Loins. My loins. My, what the hell does that word mean? Loins, not lions. Loins. Loins. The loins are an anatomical area of the body located on either side of the spine between the lower ribs and the hip bone. In both humans and animals, this region encompasses the lower back, flanks, the upper abdomen. What's girding your loins. Fruit of your loins, the literary and humorous phrase often referring to a person's children or descendants. The nether regions. In older euphemistic terms, loins can refer to public regions and reproductive origins. So loins, okay. So I'm going to go with the loins. In loins throb erotic pulses. Throbbed, because we got past tense. That is a constraint. So hug, thought, glance, while chest and loins throb erotic pulses. It's going to get a panic attack because wanting a hug right after being in, want the human touch. Hey, sometimes those sexual suppressants you take when you're doing intergalactic travels don't work all the time. I don't speak from experience, but my fictional self says it's true. 51 minutes left, and let's look at the story elements one more time to make sure that I don't mess up and score myself a 0 because I've missed one of these things. Romance, though. Fuck. Now I got to start turning the romance on. So I got like future. Yeah, we're in space. We're doing really futuristic things, so it won't be strange to humans of Earth. Not that there's humans on other planets. There's, of course, possibilities because, well, we really don't know. But let's pretend, or at least hypothesize. So setting, main location, space, conflict, person versus nature, quantity of primary characters, mini, point of view, third, tense, past tense, genre, romance, format, flash fiction. Flash fiction, yes. Past tense, working on third person, yes. Quantity of primary characters, I got 2. Is that many? Not really. Is there a third? You got to have a romance. Conflict, person versus nature, setting, main location, space, yes. Nurture is going against their loins and some directive. So it's, I suppose, I guess it is natural from a human to be able to control themselves because they actually have the thought and capacity to understand their actions could cause harm to others emotionally. So they should have at least enough agency to, not succumb to their sexual nature desires, but at the same time, they're very much there. And I think when we pretend that they're not, we have a tendency to start creating lies around it too, to make sure any sort of deviation or deviance of it to those Puritans makes it feel like it's okay. Anyway, let's move on. I think we got nature. I've at least had to give some BS argument to convince myself that it did indeed happen. Hug. Nancy needs a hug. We'll roll the dice again. And it's a 1. So Nancy needs a hug. Let's go with Nancy. About not thinking. Nancy needs a hug. Wants a hug. Wants a hug. But doesn't need a hug. Wanted a hug. Yearned. Wanting is yearned. Yearned? Earned. Yearned for a hug? Is that how you spell yearn? We checked the search and return engine yet again because I have it open, having had looked up loins. Yearned. Is this how you spell yearned? Yearns, yearn. Yearn with an A. Yearned is simply an archaic or variant spelling of yearn. So I'm going to leave that. It is the past tense and past participle of the verb yearn or yearn, which means to have an intense, deep, or wistful desire, longing, affection for something. Yearn. Let's put an A there because then it's just going to make people be able to read that easier, because now that I see this word yearned with an A, it feels more familiar and comfortable to me and how it's used today. And I'm not really thinking about the past right now. I'm thinking of the future because that's where this story is supposed to be. So Nancy yearned for a hug. A hug. Thought. Yearned. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug, to embrace her body and lock her mind to the new time after a timeless sleep. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug, to embrace her body and lock her mind to a new time after timeless sleep. Nancy imagines her dream-like past, her dream-like memories, waking from dreams of being alone in darkness, or just memories of it. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug, to embrace her body and lock her mind to the new time after timeless sleep. Nancy imagined. Imagined. It's just my natural tendency. I mean, I wrote so many words in this present simple old hat. It's hard to not do it unless I think. Rub my nose before allergies make it itch. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug, to embrace her body and lock her mind to the new time after timeless sleep. And Nancy imagined her dreamlike memory waking from dreams of being alone. Imagined fills her dream-like memory of being alone in darkness, or just a memory of being alone in darkness. A memory of being hugged by darkness. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's even better. Nancy felt, because I got to do past tense because that's part of the constraints, felt her dreamlike memory of being of hugging of only being hugged by darkness. That's a better. There we go. And by darkness. Fills her mind, fills her thoughts, filled, because it's got to be past tense. Filled. What time is it? 44 minutes left. Filled her thoughts. Nancy's mind yearned. Nancy felt her dreamlike memory of only being hugged by darkness consume her waking mind. blinded by the white glare of the room. She rubbed her eyes and lifted from the pod and sat on the hyperbed, bed, plural possessive bed. And a blurred glance. Maybe they both want hugs from Jake. Maybe Jake was a good hugger, and they just forgot about that. That should probably be the nature versus nurture. You don't want these humans to waste time thinking about central thoughts, but also avoid potential emotions in this long flight. Suppressed. She rubbed her eyes and sat on the hyperpod's bed and blurred a glance. Who looked at Jake. They're both going to blurred Jake. Who lowered their legs, his legs, because I rolled the dice, so it's his legs. And arms, because you got to get out of the dead bug pose. I want to be able to have this written so it's shown that she is observing him, which further show that there's some least attraction towards it without telling. And sat up, standing, a memory of a Jake hug. A warm embrace before they left Earth. I don't want to. All right. What about Jake? So if I go back to the stochastic fiction game story elements, I've got future, yes. I've got space, yes. I've got person versus nature, yes. Your nature to want to procreate, your nature for attraction, which is a little bit to do with society, but a lot to do with nature. Quantity of primary characters, many point of view, third, tense, past tense, genre romance, and format flash fiction. I think I got to get a little bit more of the romance. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug to embrace her body and lock her mind to the time of after timeless sleep. Nancy felt her dreamlike memory of only being hugged by darkness consume her waking mind, blinded by the white glare of the room. She rubbed her eyes and sat on the hyperpod's bed, and a blurred Jake. Let's not end the blurred Jake and a blurred Jake. It's a version of Jake. It's not the version of Jake. A blurred. Who lowered his legs and sat up, standing a memory of the Jake hug. Warm embrace before they left Earth. The Jake hug in Nancy's mind. A warm embrace before they left Earth. What? Spawning a longing for human touch. Jake looked at the floor and felt while their centrally suppressed, essentially suppressed soul. I have a centrally suppressed soul. I'm speaking as Jake. I have. Let's get these words done so I can have a story. Jake looks at the floor while they're centrally They're essentially. Jake looked at the floor while they're sensually. I'm recording audiobooks right now, so I almost all have a tendency to repeat things if I cannot say them with some clarity. Open their tapped mind to telepathically I know what's going to happen. I get it now. Jake's not ready for it. He's going to throw Jake's game off, and they all die. No, they don't all die. It's an insurance liability, maybe. Or they had to put him back in the hyperpod. Well, telepathically loading into their mind chip, into their mind cap. The status. Jake looked at the floor while their essentially suppressed soul opened their tapped mind to telepathically load. Their essentially suppressed mind tapped. Open their tapped mind to telepathically load. They're capped and tapped. Their capped head and tapped mind to telepathically load the status, the flight status. What else here? The flights. Can I say the flight status a couple more times? Because I can say that and read it aloud pretty fine. I'm not. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's just make it really annoying. Their capped head and tapped mind to telepathically load the flight status. Excuse me. Okay, well, I need some water. 35 minutes left. I got to get a hug. I got to make things go awry. I got to get the story done. Jake looked at the floor while their essentially suppressed soul opened their capped head. Their essentially suppressed soul freed their capped head and tapped mind to open wide, and allow telepathically and allowed the load, the download of the flight status and the next mission steps. I guess maybe I don't want to seem like it couldn't been others. I rolled dice for this. I'll just keep it at the gender's conflicts. Jake looked at the floor while their essentially suppressed soul freed their capped head and tapped mind to open wide and allow the download of the light status in the mission steps. The light status. It's dark. That's the light status. No, it's bright. Actually, I just wrote that in the story. All right. Well. He stood and walked while being told The plant. The terrarium? Is it terrarium I'm looking for? I think we need terrarium. I think terrarium's the word. The terrarium. Terrarium. Let's start a song. The terrarium song. Let's go look. I got the search and return engine right here. So terrarium. Terrarium. That's the word. Terrarium. Maybe I could just start. Have a really small side hustle doing pronunciations of words on the internet. Terrarium. No, it'd still suck. I'd lose that job. And it probably wouldn't pay that well, given there's a large language model that could probably do it better than me. In my voice, with any word that exists. He stood and walked. He stood and walked. He walked. He stood after being told the terrarium. While being told the terrarium plants. Is that silent running? Now I got to look that up because I already got the search. So I just got it because now I'm thinking of silent running again. Is it silent running? Yes, it is silent running. Absolutely. I got to watch that again. Silent Running was such a great show. Movie. It was one that obviously I remember to this day. I think it was seen on VHS at home because, I wasn't born in 1972 and was able to see it in the theater. Great show. At least it holds up well. I've never seen it since, so at least it left impression. Silent Running. So he stood while being told the terrarium plants needed more sun. That was also one of the things in that silent running. I won't give it away. Let's just say, I won't give it away. He stood while being told the terrarium plants need more sun. He stood while being told the terrarium plants need more sun. Glance. And who's the Nancy? Glance and Nancy. Swelled. Needed of a hug from Jake. Because a Jake, which align, like I don't want to witch, like I'm trying to like one of those people that give good hugs. I'm not one of those people. Like I've never been complimented for it, but there have been people I've hugged before, and they've hugged other people, and they were like a good hugger. And that's all Jake is. He was a good hugger, and that stuck with them. So when they wake, for misaligned reasons, they want to hug Jake. Like it's completing a mission before they start. Like completing a mission. Excuse me. Like commencing. Swelled needs. Swelled of for the need. Swelled. Longed. Long for a hug from Jake. like a sensual rush, or like commencing the next phase of a plan. Similar how Jake hugged people after a when fear and loneliness happened during training and before the mission. Like a sensual, like a sensual or a commencement, the next plan? What the I got to figure that out because it could be a good sentence if I just think about it for a moment. I got 27 minutes left. I'm fairly confident I can write 3 more paragraphs in that time, which I think is about the amount of paragraphs it'll take for this story. It ain't going to be a terribly long story. It's flash fiction. What do you expect? Probably more. If it's done poorly, yeah. If it's done poorly, you're not going to want more. You're just going to want away. He stood while being told the terrarium plants need more sun. The onboard computer, right? The onboard agent. By being told by the onboard agent, the terrarium plants need more sun. Glance and Nancy longed for a hug from Jake, like a sensual or for a sensual rush. Or to complete or commence work similar to how Jake hugged people when fearful or lonely during the training. Into space. All right. Glance and Nancy stood from their pods and walked to Jake, glancing at each other. Jake looked at the floor while their essentially suppressed soul freed their capped head and tapped mind open wide and allowed the download of the flight status and the mission steps. He stood while being told by onboard agent the terrarium plans need more sun. Needed. Let's put the past in the past. Glance and Nancy longed for a hug from Jake for sensual rush or to complete or commence work similar to how Jake hugged people when fearful and lonely during the training and before the launch into space. John. Yeah, let's just throw it in there so it doesn't seem so like John. Comment to the team before launch and after a hug from Jake said, Jake can free a troubled soul with their hugs. His. That's how it rolled. Glance and Nancy stoop from their pods. Like, I'm going to stoop. I'm going to sit there on the stoop before it goes to the door. So Nancy stood from their pods, stood, and walked. I mean, we all know they're there. Let's not waste words by repeating the place where they're at. I got 23 minutes left. Glancing at each other. Nancy stopped and tried to find words to move mouth, while Glance stepped between Nancy. No, Nancy. While Glance stepped between Nancy and Jake, lifting her arms, feeling like her arms are, Nancy is, Glance's his arms, lifting their arms. I need to stretch more in life. I suppose this is stretching one's mind. I need to stretch my body likely more often than I do. Probably need more hugs in my life too now that I'm writing about it. Like a fuck ton more. I hate to throw that F-bomb out there, but I guess I just want to use it for emphasis. I think we all need more hugs in our life, especially now. Glance and Nancy stood from and walked to Jake, glancing at each other. Glancing. Oh, now that's why you can't have something called glance, because then, like, you have the word glancing. Let's just do glance. Zance. Put a Z with it. I'm going to change, because I want to have this glancing. Clance. I'm Clance. Maybe Clance will work. When in doubt, just change it. So let's do this. Let's do what is that? I ain't gonna get any salacious, so I can do search and global replace. So I'm gonna do glance with Clance. Oh boy, Clance. I'm gonna Clance and Nancy and Jake, so I can be glancing at each other and not get confused. So Nancy stopped and tried to find words. Stopped and mumbled. That's better. Mumbled to move mouth. While Clance stepped between Nancy and Jake, lifting their arms, feeling like they're lifting their arms, feeling like they are there. I just need this E, this Y, there, like they are, feeling like they're. I need an emotional anchor and relief. Jake steps into Glance and Nancy. Oh, that's terrible. Jake steps into glance. Who's taller? I say glance. Let's roll the dice. It depends on where they're going to get hit. 1, 2, glance. Jake, 3, 4. Looks like glance is taller. So glance steps into Jake. Jake steps into glance. I can't remember what I said. I think I have glance being taller. I'll just say glance is taller. So Jake's forehead's going to slam her nose or their nose. Their nose. Yeah, that's going to totally wake them up. Jake steps into glances, steps and bumps. Bumps. His forehead into Glance's nose. And on against the bridge of Glance's nose. There we are. Words. They're magical. Sometimes. Jake stepped, feeling like they needed. Excuse me, past tense I need. Stepped and bumped. Against the bridge of Glance's nose. A white flash. Shock, pain. Shock blasts through Glance's face. Numbing the need for a hug. And triggering anger, suppressed during the journey home, during the journey to their mission, blah, blah, not journey home. I don't know. I'm getting quiet and sloppy right now. I've watched a lot of these stochastic fiction games, and I read the end and use it. I listen to it. And usually by the end, my voice gets quiet and I mumble a lot more. As my mind gets more drawn into the words in the story I reason, I become less observant and aware of anything outside my mind and life, except for the story. Shock blast through Glance's face, numbing the need for a hug and triggering anger. I'm hangry. Anger. Suppressed during the journey. Glance pushed Jake onto the pod, the hyperpod, hyperpod, who fell and hit their head on the edge of the hyperpod bed. Hyperpod bed. This is romance. God. That's terrible. How is this romance? I got to turn into romance. I got 13 minutes to turn this thing into romance. where's this sentence go? I need this. Clients long for a hug. Nancy stopped and mumbled her ings. Jake do. That's what I want. Right there. Glances. Hybrid bed. What was it? Nancy, glance, and Jake, Nancy. Ran and knelt by Jake, whose concussed mind shook into it memories and the thought of body and mind, feeling the pain in his head, but felt and felt the yearning for Nancy. A savior who freed his mind from the talk of the machine and the mission. Jake, this is on the borderlines of maybe a story, maybe a romance. Jake and Nancy hugged and kissed. And they stayed together while Nancy stood, body, well, see, Nancy sat on the floor, her head wobbling and nose sore. Unable to focus for work after yearning for a hug and getting only a pop in the nose and a betrayal of the story in her mind that they wait. Nancy said no, Clancy. I have a Clancy clan. I like KLANCS names for some reason. Their head wobbled because it's not Nancy. I think I might get this done. Their head wobbled and nose wobbled. And yearned for a hug and got only a pop on the head and got only a pop on the nose and the betrayal and a feeling of betrayal in her rested mind. I don't know. Only a pop on the nose and betrayal of the soul. hugging. She wanted a Jake hug. Jake hug. Man. More out. 8 minutes. Is this complete? Not really. From that moment on, all crew members refrained from hugs and relationships. And a new rule was invented. That'll end it. It's wishy-washy. You shall not procreate no pair bond during and then we can have it do this. Term 67. 63. Of the Intergalactic Exploration Flight Crew Agreement for Flight 19. From Earth to any galaxy. You shall not procreate nor pair bond nor hug before launch and that's it. That's done. I'm done. I don't need to think about it more. We got 5 minutes and 40 seconds left. Let's just read this aloud and be done. I can move on with life and write other words and edit other stories for books to be done in the future. So for today's stochastic fiction game story, using these story parameters, these story elements, setting time, future, setting main location, space, conflict person versus nature, quantity of primary characters, mini, point of view, third, tense, past tense, genre, romance, format, flash fiction. Those are the story elements. I think I wrote to most of those story elements. I'm going to take a little bit of water, read this thing aloud, and then rate it. For today's stochastic fiction game story, Term 3 of the Intergalactic Exploration Flight Crew Agreement for Flight 19 from Earth to the Obsidian Galaxy. You shall not procreate nor pair bond during space travel. No one trained clans to sleep for 4 years and 16 days while suppressing erotic dreams so they would wake feeling the need for sensual touch. Realizing the sensual suppressant pills and the psycho training failed to suppress the pulsating need for a hug while sitting with head hung in the waking room with 3 other members of the flight crew. Clans tried to listen to the instruction on how to recover memory or work for their job of repair of data normalization and redundancy if one human died. Clans only thought about hugging Jake. Jake laid on the hyperpod bed of a row of 6 of open hyperpods, doing dead bugs to sync his mind and body before sitting up. Jake's muscled body shrunk during the hyperbed. Jake. And his mind recessed into introverted during the long journey of dreaming and the problem solving of work, and not thinking about a hug. Jake looked at the illuminated white ceiling, thinking the processes ensure the coordinates are accurate and report near the obsidian galaxy, and to begin waking the entire 14 crew members, not thinking about a hug. Nancy's mind yearned for a hug to embrace her body and lock her mind to the new time after a timeless sleep. Nancy felt her dreamlike memory of only being hugged by darkness consumed her waking mind, blinded by the white glare of the room. She rubbed her eyes and sat on the hyperpod bed and blurred Jake, who lowered his legs and sat up. Standing a memory of Jake hug, Nancy's mind thought of a warm embrace before they left Earth, spawning a longing for human touch. Jake looked at the floor while their central suppressed soul freed their capped head and tapped mind to open wide and allow the download of the flight status and the mission steps. He stood while being told by the onboard agent that the terraforming planet's pod needed more sun. Glance and Nancy longed for a hug from Jake, for central rush or to complete or commence work similar to how Jake hugged people when fearful or lonely or during the training before the launch into space. John's comment to the team before launch and after a hug from Jake said, "Jake can free a troubled soul with his hugs." Glance and Nancy stood from and walked to Jake, glancing at each other. Nancy stopped and mumbled to move mouth while Clance stepped between Nancy and Jake, lifting their arms and feeling like their need of an emotional anchor and relief with a hug. Hug, thought Clance, while chest and loins throbbed, erotic pulses. Jake stepped and bumped his forehead into the bridge of Glance's nose. Shock blasted through Glance's face, numbing the need for a hug and triggering anger suppressed during the journey. Glance pushed Jake on the hyperpod, who fell and hit their head on the edge of the hyperpod bed. Nance ran and knelt by Jake, concussed mind, shook it to the memories and the thought of a body and mind, feeling the need of pain in his head, and felt a yearning for Nancy, a savior who freed his mind from the talk of the machine and mission. Jake and Nancy hugged and kissed. Glance sat on the floor, their head wobbled and yearned for a hug and got only a pop on the nose and betrayal of the soul. She just wanted a Jake hug and a different job. From that moment on, all the crew members refrained from hugs and physical relationships, and a new rule was created. Term 63 of the Intergalactic Exploration Flight Crew Agreement for Flight 20 and beyond from Earth to any galaxy. You shall not procreate, nor pair bond, nor hug before launching for the space mission. Well, that was today's stochastic fiction game story. As is the usual, the further I got into the story, because I wrote this from beginning to end, the worse it kind of got. I think a little bit of reading will make it better. Ooh, we got this vibration and this alarm going off just in time for me to rate this story. I think, if I had idols, that they'd be like, hey, that's a decent story, and you may enjoy the stink, but it is stinky. I don't know, it hits parameters in a way, but, I'd need to maybe rewrite it a little bit to get rid of the stench, reconsider the whole journey in the story. So I'm going to give it a 2. I guess there's, 0, 1, 2, 3. I should put 0 up on those instructions, and maybe I'll do that today. But we're going to move on with other stories right now. So in order to do that, what I do is I save these things along with this transcript to be able to at least have this event maybe for the future story, or just be able to show that it was written and how it was done by a human. Write a story for the game to maybe help show and tell how to create as a human. The story read, it is okay, maybe a good thought, but that thought is still that thought. Trough. I was trying to think of that. That thought. And with time, and with that complete, let's go dream of space. And I'm going to go find a hug. I hope you can do the same.